Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with two very special guests. Our first guest today is Jill-Sherer-Murray, and she's here to share with us her new book, Big Wild Love, The Unstoppable Power of Letting Go. Now, Jill is a founder of Let Go For It, a lifestyle brand dedicated to helping individuals let go for a better life. Jill's TED Talk called The Unstoppable Power of Letting Go, as well as her book, have been created in service to her loyal and growing fan base who seek support in the act and art of letting go for the love they desire and deserve. So let's welcome to the show, Jill-Sherer-Murray.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I'm thrilled to be here.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here. My goodness, I saw your TED Talk, and now I got a hold of this book, and I just could not wait to have this conversation with you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Yeah.
Well, so
it's been quite a road.
I bet. I mean, your book was just released. I mean, how exciting is that?
It is so exciting. It's just amazing to see this thing that you have worked so hard on sort of, get pushed out into the world. And, it's, we don't think about how we really start with nothing. And then we just take all this brain stuff and put it into this book in the hopes that it will be helpful. That's really the thought behind my book, which, I'm a writer by trade. So I've been writing my whole life. And, I've got other books that I've written that are in my drawer and things that I've written and things that I've put out. But this book really came about in response to a need that had made itself so present for me after I gave my TEDx talk and had all these people reach out to me for help and advice. So I'm really, really excited that it's finally out into the world and that people can get their hands on it and really hopefully benefit and learn from my experience and from other women's experiences, because I do share them in the book.
Now, was that your main inspiration for writing this book?
Yes, it really was. I always, like I said, I'm a writer. I've been writing my whole life. I've written fiction. I've written blogs. I've written columns. But this book really came to me because people out there really had questions. I knew that, and I talk about letting go. So I knew that, letting go had been an issue for me in the past and in my lifetime. And I'd seen other people struggle with the same issues. We're all human. We read things about letting go all the time and how important that it is. But I had no idea the response that I would get to my TEDx talk. And when I was getting these responses, I'm literally, Marianne, from women all over the world. And they're really asking me the same questions around how to do this, how to let go, that I thought, instead of giving everybody and trying to respond to everybody and giving them the same answers, it was really a wonderful opportunity to be able to put it all together in this book and to be able to serve them by actually telling them what I did and how I did it to let go and find my way to the life that I wanted. So, before that TEDx talk and before all that information, would I have written this book? I don't know, but for sure it was absolutely in response to sort of meeting the needs and the demands and the questions that people were starting to share with me. And I really, really hope that it helps people.
Yeah. Well, and how many of us are in these dead-end relationships where we're kind of like, hey, I've been doing this for so many years. I feel so disempowered. I don't feel like I'm getting my needs met. But at the same time, there's almost this fear of being able to let go.
Yeah. It's like we're constantly weighing, what's the lesser of two evils, right? Instead of looking at our lives and saying, you know what? I need to take a chance on myself, because letting go is really so much about taking a risk. And that's a lot of the reason why people hold on and why they stay stuck, because they think, well, at least I know what I've got. And what I've got is better than either what I don't know I'm going to get or not getting anything and looking back and saying, gosh, why did I do that? Or maybe I made this big mistake. And there's also, the whole idea that, I love when you say, we're disempowered, because that is the word, is that it's being very woefully disempowered in terms of how we see ourselves and what we think is possible for us and what we think we deserve from love and relationship. And that's a lot of the reason why I know I held on to a long-term relationship that I knew was never going to get me where I wanted to go. And in so many of the women that I talk to and continue to talk to and spoken to over the years, it's the same reason that they hold on, because it's safe and it's comfortable. And even if they're uncomfortable inside of it, even though if they know that they're settling or compromising, or maybe they're not as happy as they'd like to be, they say, well, at least I've got something. I'm not alone. At least I've got this and I know it and I can deal with it and I can accept it and cope inside of it. And so I'm just going to stay right here.
It's interesting how many of us do that and get to this place where we're so unfulfilled, and eventually gets to a tipping point where we're like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I loved your book because it really gives women a roadmap and people a roadmap for being able to make those shifts and adjustments. And it's not as scary as we would think.
It's really not. I mean, it's the perception and the imagination of all the things that can happen to us when we let go of this thing that we've put so much stock into. And I talk about in my book how we finally, hopefully, get to that epiphany moment, right? Where, we realize I can't stay here anymore. And we try and hold that down. We try and hold that sensation down of, I don't want to get there, because once I'm at that moment, I'm at that epiphany moment of, oh my gosh, maybe something happened, or a realization just came to you in response to just a random event. And you're like, now I really need to create change, but maybe I'm not ready to create that change. And so it all becomes so very big and scary, and we blow it up in our minds. And the really interesting thing about that to me, Marianne, is always, we're already uncomfortable. We're already in a situation where we're not as happy as we could be, where we're not as fulfilled as we could be. We're not getting what we want. Maybe we're having that negative self-talk in our minds, like, what are you doing? You should leave. This is bad. This is stupid. You can do this, or it's the self-loathing track of, I know I should do this, but I'm not. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And living through that, but yet going through the letting go process is, yes, it's painful in the short term, but there's so much freedom and possibility that comes from it when you let go of a person, an idea, a relationship, an experience that's taking up space inside of your life. When you let go of it, yes, there's an open space. But at a certain point, you say, wow, instead of saying, oh my God, I have this void and I'm feeling empty and lost and lonely, eventually you get to that point where you're like, wow, now I have this wonderful, glorious open space to do whatever I want to do with it and put whatever I want to put inside of it. Perhaps things I've only dreamed about, but never thought I could achieve or were possible for me, because I was so busy tending to this thing that was there that wasn't serving me. Yeah. So it's really getting to the other side of that. And I think that's, another reason why people hold on.
Well, it's interesting that, and when I read your book, I kind of think about, here we have this beautiful garden and we're tending to the weeds, So it's
exactly
it's kind of like, we don't want the weeds in our life,
Right. And tending to the weeds, first of all, it's backbreaking. Second of all, there's never a reward, Tending to weeds just generates more weeds. I love that analogy because it's perfect. It's like we're putting all of our energy into those weeds when we could be, ripping up those weeds and toiling some new soil, giving ourselves the time to do that and to start to cultivate what we want to put there. So, and that's the beauty of letting go, is really, if you can get yourself to a place where you're willing to let go of the weeds, where you're willing to take the risk that something better is going to grow there, then you can do it. But, my book is called Big Wild Love because that's really what you need to have in order to be able to take those risks, is to have big, wild love for yourself. Because that big, wild love is what tells you, I'm going to pull these weeds, but I know that I'm also going to be able to put something really lovely and really beautiful there because I have the power and the capacity to do that, because I believe in myself. I trust myself. I love myself. I know what I'm capable of. And I know that no matter what happens, I will be okay because I am awesome.
So I love that, and I think a lot of times when we're kind of in it, it's hard to see that area of self-love because we're already in a place where we're feeling kind of down and disempowered. How did you get to this place of self-love?
Well, I think being in the place of feeling down and disempowered and getting to that epiphany moment, because I think if we can get to a point in that sense of disempowerment where we can get really quiet and still and stop asking questions about the other person's motivation, the other person and what they're doing and why they're not doing what we want or need, or not giving us what we want or need, asking ourselves the victim-y kinds of questions like, why me? Or this isn't fair? Or how did I get here? If we can get to that place of stillness where we can allow that moment of epiphany that says, wait a minute, I need to let go. I really need to start thinking about, what can I do here to get to a better place? Then what happens, at least this is what happened for me, is I started to change my inner dialogue, which went from, why isn't my boyfriend giving this to me? And maybe I need to be smarter and prettier and thinner and more accommodating and more flexible and more willing to defer my needs. And then he'll give it to me, to, why am I here? What am I getting from it? What do I need to know about myself that has me making this choice right now? What is my motivation for staying? And what do I need to change, adjust, reimagine for myself in order to be able to let go and move forward? So I started naturally asking myself different questions. And as I started to ask myself those questions, I started to realize that I always had the freedom of choice. I always had the power to say, you know what? Because my ex was a good person, he just didn't want what I did. I could have always said to him, you know what? I love you and I wish you well, but you can't give me what I need. And so I'm not going to wait for you to decide what I have. I'm going to choose it for myself and take that first bold, brave step away. And when you do that, the talk track changes in our heads. It goes from self-loathing to, why am I still here? It starts to shift to, wow, that felt really good, to actually take a stand for myself. And yeah, I'm scared. I'm terrified. I have no idea what's going to happen to me. I have no idea if this is the biggest mistake of my life. I have no idea if I'll ever have one more date ever again in my entire life. I have no idea. But at least now I know that I don't have to stay there. That's not my life sentence. And that I have the power to start doing work on myself that will allow me to attract in more of what I want, which is other big, wild, loving things, people, relationships, people that come to meet you on the level where you are. So it's really more about the work that happens internally. It's about changing your own storyline and asking yourself by starting to ask yourself different questions. Because when you ask questions about why somebody else does something, it's a dead end road. We'll never know why people do things. Even if they tell us, even if they sit us down and say, this is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. How can we trust that? Because they may not even know why they're doing what they're doing. They may not be, fully self-actualized that way, or they may not have the motivation to be truthful or honest, or we can never rely on other people's, reasons for why they do what they do. All we can fully understand is our own. And so it's really stepping into that storyline, stepping into that place inside where you can eventually say, you know what? I mean, I stayed in my relationship for 12 years and I had to really be able to say to myself, you know, I forgive you for that, but you did it because it was what you knew how to do. It was the best you could do in the moment. And, you know, being able to take these baby steps towards better understanding yourself. I had to better understand myself and my limiting beliefs and the things that kept me there so that I could address them and change them and flip the script and then put myself back out into the world where I could make better choices for myself, the kinds of choices that would get me to the unique life that I wanted. And that's different for all of us. I wanted to get married. Not everybody wants that. It's not the only way to be happy in life. It's not the end all be all. But for me, it was something that I wanted. So yeah. So it's flipping the script and just really getting much more in tune with your own motivations and realizing that, you know, you own your life.
Well, and as you look back at the time that you stayed, you know, what do you think was your biggest lesson that you learned for yourself along the way?
You know, that's such a really good question. There were so many. I think the biggest lesson that I learned was that I think what I really just said was that I always had the power to choose differently. And, you know, I operated from a lot of limiting beliefs, Marianne, that, you know, I had to look a certain way and be a certain way and feel a certain way in order to be loved. And I let those beliefs really guide me. But what I learned in that whole experience was that I was very strong and resilient and that I really didn't need to be in a situation that wasn't giving me what I wanted. And I also learned that, and I really do believe this, I think finding the right, healthy love, relationships, partners, things, whatever we want in life there's kind of a spectrum. And we all have to go through our own learning process. So when I was in my 20s, I dated very badly. I had some really terrible boyfriends. They were horrible. I mean, I look back at them and I think, oh, Jill, dear Lord, what were you doing there?
I think we've all had that.
Right. And then in my 30s, when I met my boyfriend, my long-term, he was really a good person who just didn't want what I wanted. I was progressing. So I was doing better, but I still hadn't gotten myself where I wanted to go. So, you know, I like to think that every relationship, every choice that we make ultimately brings us closer to who we're meant to be and what we ultimately want and choose to bring into our lives. If we're taking our lessons, if we're doing that internal retrospective that I talked about, if we're being thoughtful about what we are feeling and learning from all the different experiences that we have in a way that allows us to apply that to the next time up at bat. And what I felt in leaving that relationship was, you know, after I forgave myself for spending so much time was, you know, but I really got a lot from that. And it was with a really good person and I got closer. I didn't get all the way there, but I got closer. And all of that gave me the footing and the grounding and the lift that I needed to move on. And the next time out of the gate actually was the right time. So there was a lot that came of it. You know, I mean, these are the pieces of our lives, you know, and we have to embrace all of it.
Well, you know, it's the lessons that get us to where we are today. So, I mean, you know, we have to have some point of learning and having a deeper understanding of what we like and what it is that we're expecting out of life. So, I mean, I just applaud you. I love your story. There's a lot I learned about it personally. And I think a lot of women are learning as they're reading your book as well as going, gosh, you know what? I probably need to set higher standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably a pretty universal, that will probably be a pretty universal thing that comes out of some of the learnings, even in watching my story and some of the stories of the other women that I talk about in the book and some of the statistics too. You know, I think, you know, we do have to set our sights higher and we have to pull away from this idea of scarcity in love. And I think that's something that a lot of us have, especially women, that we've gotten from society. Maybe we've gotten from our mothers or other influences that, tell us, there's kind of not enough to go around, right? There's a short supply of good men. There's no good men out there. You'd be lucky to find someone. I mean, I heard a lot of, you gave away the best years of your life. So we have this mindset that we're lucky to have someone because there's not that many good people out there. And I just, you know what, Marianne, I just don't believe that. I think there are a lot of wonderful people out there. I mean, yes, there are some really not so great people in the world, but I really believe, especially, the statistics don't lie. I mean, more than 50% of the population is single for the first time ever, which means that it's not just women being single. There's men being single. There's a lot of people, newly in the dating pool due to divorce, not just first divorces, but second divorces, third divorces. I'm not advocating divorce, but I'm just stating some of the things that I learned. People are waiting longer to get married. So there's really abundance out there in terms of love and, finding a potential partner. And I think it's a mindset that's really hard for so many of us because we've had failed relationships. We've seen failed relationships. We have access to so much information online that it's really easy for us to find proof for our beliefs. So if we believe that there's scarcity, if we believe there are no good men out there, we will certainly find information that will confirm that for us. But I also believe that if we flip the switch and we come from a place of empowering beliefs versus limiting beliefs, and we search for proof of those, I think we'll find that information too. Because I know there's so many people I know, over 40, under 40, over 50. I had friends who just got married for the first time, if that's what you want, at age 60, and they couldn't be happier. I mean, every year is a part of our life. So I think it's really about going into love and relationship with a spirit of abundance instead of lack.
Oh man, you've got that right. Because how often do you hear, "Oh, I'm 50 and there are no good guys out there." And it's like, well, if you have that belief, then you're going to get no good guys out there,
Absolutely. And, of course, there's, all the men my age want someone who's younger. Well, sure. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that might want someone who's younger, and they might want someone who's taller or thinner or fatter or smarter, who likes, pizza every night for dinner, or who wants to roll marbles down the street, or, likes to go bowling every Friday night. I mean, people have preferences, and, if you meet someone who wants someone who's younger, then that's not your person. But I joke because I'll say to my husband at, like 8:00 when we're sitting there thinking, gosh, is it too early to go to sleep? And I'm like, how would this be going for you right now if you had a nice 20-something girlfriend? Tell me.
Well, do you know what? And I think with that comes, that actually just weeds out the people who are not a fit. Because
that's right.
If I am interested in dating and, someone is looking for somebody younger, they're not going to be a fit for me mentally, emotionally, anything,
Exactly. And I talk about that in my book. I talk about sort of how do you wheedle through those options and how to adjust your expectations in the sense that, once you get very clear about the kind of person and relationship that you're looking for, you are going to eliminate opportunities. So it may feel like your opportunities are smaller, but they're really not. They're just better because it's setting you up to actually find what it is that you actually want. And that's what you're going for. If you're looking for healthy love, if you're looking for new love after relationship, or you're looking to leave your current relationship, or, your current relationship with another person, or your current relationship with your sofa, and your dog. It's
and
really
Ben and Jerry's,
about,
right?
And Ben and Jerry's. Yes. Every other ice cream manufacturer on earth should just hang it up because they can't beat them. Especially Ben and Jerry. That's not a good throuple. Okay. Not good. But it's really about, and I say this in my book, it's really, I spent many years in corporate America. I mean, it's really borrowing from the whole notion of a business plan, but really applying that to how you go about finding the right fit and love, being very targeted and very specific, and being aware of if you are, unusually drawn or attracted to someone that you've never met before or you don't know, that might be a red flag, because that might be some old behavior or old wound or old comfort that's rising back up on you that is, drawing you to it. So like, for example, when I started dating after I left my relationship, I met a guy online who I really, really liked. And we had great dates together, but we would have a date and then I wouldn't hear from him for weeks. And then he would call me from out of the blue and I would make myself available and we would have another date. And I really, really liked him. But what I really liked was that he reminded me of what I was used to, which was deferring my needs, not asking for much, and being grateful to have attention. And so after the third date, I declined. And I was really proud of myself. And I was like, yay, good day for big, wild love, because he was just reinforcing all the old behaviors, bringing them back up. And that was very comfortable to me, but it was never serving me. So, we have to really pay attention, and we have to be very, very clear and pay attention to what we want versus what our impulses draw us to. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I mean, how often do we kind of get stuck in getting stuck because it's comfortable, but we're miserable. And right. I've got to say, if you were to have a superpower, it's definitely letting go.
Yes. And believe me, Marianne, I walk my talk every single day. I walk my talk. And sometimes when I'm spinning on something or, my husband will be like, what are you doing over there? You're right. I need to let go. And I literally throw myself in my process every time, no matter what it is. In fact, I recently let go of my corporate job, which was not serving me anymore. I find myself, even if I'm like spinning on somebody else's bad behavior that I just don't understand, I'm scratching my head, I will catch myself and I will say, why am I holding on so tightly to this other person's story? It has nothing to do with me. It's their choice. It's their road. And what I usually can find is that it's a good way for me to distract myself from my own. Wow. So I immediately re-envision and refocus and bring myself back to my life and what I want. And I ask myself, if spinning on that other person's life choices is advancing me closer to what I want. And if it's not, I have to let it go because I don't have the space for it. None of us do.
That's such good advice. I mean, and for women that are kind of just struggling with that letting go, what advice do you have for them? I know we've covered a lot.
Yeah. Well, I really think that our limiting beliefs are very powerful. And I've talked to women a lot. And I have to say that one thing I noticed that's really hard for women to do is to focus back on that, is stop focusing on what your partner is doing, why they're doing it, why they're not doing it. Don't spend your time armchair diagnosing another person. Spend that time armchair diagnosing yourself, figuring out why you are where you are, why you're holding on, looking for that epiphany moment and listening to it when it happens, inviting it in that says, you know what, it is time for change. And I think if women who are stuck, and men too, if they're stuck making the same choices or stuck in the same place that's not changing and not giving them what they want, it's about looking in the mirror and asking the hard questions and being open to the answers and creating change. And then, letting go becomes a very obvious choice.
Oh my goodness, Jill, I just love your book, and I'm so delighted we've been able to spend this time together to talk about Big Wild Love. Where can our listeners go to learn more about your work, learn about your book, and be part of your community?
So they can go to my website, which is letgoforit.com, and subscribe. I'm also on Facebook at Let Go For It, and I have a Facebook group called the Society of Big Wild Love with Jill-Sherer-Murray, which I would love to have people join. I'm on Instagram at Let Go For It and Twitter at Let Go For It. And my book is wherever books are sold. If you subscribe to the website, you can keep up on podcasts and events and all that kind of stuff. And I would love to hear from people on how they like the book and if they're doing the exercises and what they're learning about letting go and if they're actually doing it.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us today.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. It was so much fun. Thank you for letting me share all my stuff.
Well, thank you, Jill. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you. And of course, to talk about your new book, Big Wild Love. Big Wild Love is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and of course, you can get it on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with Jill, you can go to her website, letgoforit.com, for more information. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. Make sure to tune in for our next guest coming right up, Katherine Wintsch, who's here to share with us her new book, Slay Like a Mother, How to Destroy What's Holding You Back so you can live the life you want. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here with our next special guest, Katherine Wintsch, and she's here to share with us her new book, Slay Like a Mother, How to Destroy What's Holding You Back so you can live the life you want. Now, Katherine dedicates her life to making the lives of mothers easier. In her role as founder and CEO of the Mom Complex, she helps the largest companies in the world, such as Walmart, Johnson & Johnson, Baby Dove, and many more, better understand and support their mom customers and employees. So let's welcome to the show, Katherine Wintsch.
Thanks for having me.
You can't say the name of your book without giggling a little bit,
Yeah, I love it. We worked for a really long time. You always want to try to find the perfect title. And there were so many that we had that I didn't love. And I really do love this one.
Oh my God, it's perfect. And, I'd love for you to share with our listeners, like, what inspired you to write this book? I mean, I picked it up and I could not put it down.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wrote Slay Like a Mother because, unfortunately, for 20 years of my life, from age 15 to 35, I lived with what I refer to as a dragon of self-doubt. This relentless belief that I wasn't doing enough, I wasn't enough, and I had to hustle so hard to prove myself. And but thankfully, after lots of therapy and self-help books, I learned to slay my dragon of self-doubt. And now I've written a book to help other women do the same.
Yeah. How important is that? Because how often do we feel like, we're working, for those that are parents, they're parenting too. You've got all these things going on. And at the same time, it's still not enough.
Yeah, it's just this hamster wheel of accomplishments. And I lived on for so long just collecting titles and trophies like they were trading cards, but I just got to a certain point where I was like, but to what end? Like going from a VP to a senior vice president or whatever, all these things that I thought were going to help, make me happy. I ended up just wanting more and more of them. And, but like I said, I'm living proof that you can get off that hamster wheel and live a more peaceful life.
Yeah, it's so important. And at what point did you decide, I need to make some really serious changes here?
Well, it was when I was 35 and I'd gone through lots of therapy, like I said, read tons of self-help books. And I really identified that I needed to have a wholesale career change. I'd grown up in the marketing and advertising industry and I wanted to be an entrepreneur and out on my own. And so that was about when I was 35. And I felt like I just needed to make some big changes in my life that would just more align how I felt on the inside with what showed up on the outside instead of, doing things to please other people or impress other people.
I can understand that. I mean, I look back in my career and there are, times where, I was an overachiever, I get all the awards and I was still miserable. And you're right. It's like that self-doubt comes in. You talk about dragons in your book. So for our listeners, what constitutes a dragon for just everybody?
Well, a dragon of self-doubt is just this nagging belief inside of you that basically chews up everything you do wrong, nothing you do right, and just spits it back in your face. So it's this belief that as is, you're not good enough or smart enough, thin enough, tough enough, whatever, enough. And it's a negative voice in your head. And it's a pretty painful way to live. And, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately in this case, but I travel all around the world doing workshops for women. And the unfortunate part is that it's just something that berates them, all day, every day. And most people aren't even aware of it. And so it's important that we're talking about this.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, do you find that, women a lot of times feel like they're fighting with each other?
Well, I think any type of, fighting between women is often because we just don't believe in ourselves enough first. I always say when it comes to the mommy wars that mothers are not at war with other mothers, we're at war with ourselves. And I think if we can be happier with ourselves and learn to like ourselves, learn to love ourselves, then we fight less with other people because we care less about how they're living their life and what they're doing because we're happy with our own choices. So I think any type of war usually begins within.
I was shocked when I read your book and you talk about the research where 9 out of 10 mothers live with constant self-doubt. I mean, that's shocking.
Yeah, the self-doubt is, but it can be little small things like, I doubt I should be putting this much sugar in my coffee to, I doubt whether I'm a good wife. It can be big things, but it also can be, the average mother makes 250 food decisions in a day between, grocery shopping and meal planning and snacking and eating herself. And so, there's just thousands of opportunities each day to doubt yourself if you have this underlying belief that as is, you're not good enough.
So what are some of the things that moms can do right now to start, kind of changing that inner dialogue?
One of the things, I'll tell you a story about kind of teaching the negative voice in your head some manners. I think that's really the first step that has to happen. And so I'll give you an example from my own life that's sharing too much information, but it'll get the point across. So I really like to ride the Peloton bike. And I was on a business trip a couple months ago, and they had a Peloton bike, and I was riding it. And when I was done, I reached back to kind of stretch and put both of my hands on the top of my backside and felt what felt like was 2 handfuls of cellulite. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what the negative voice in my head said, what must that look like? I was kind of paranoid looking around to see if other people could see it. And then, so first of all, I heard the negative voice in my head, attacking me, but then I taught it some manners. And I said, what this looks like is that I got my rear end out of bed and I went to the gym. That's what this looks like, period. And so you're never going to get the mean voice to completely go away in your head, but you really can learn over time to teach it some manners.
I think my dragon has no manners, actually. But then, I felt your book was really helpful because it is really kind of taking control over how you're having that dialogue and what's going on.
Yeah. And you, like I said, you have to be aware of it. And, even knowing how cruel your dragon is the first step. I mean, to identifying that it's not you. It is, just this negativity, inside of you that can be squashed eventually.
So when did you feel that your dragon was born? Because I think it will help our listeners also to kind of find the roots of theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. So my research shows that 75% of the time, a woman's self-doubt is born during or before adolescence. So it's often quite young that our self-doubt begins to grow, and it's can happen from terrible events like trauma and abuse all the way to very small slights. Somebody made fun of you in the 5th grade because you spelled a word wrong. My dragon was born my freshman year in high school when I experienced conditional love for the first time in my life. And that was when my first boyfriend, first true love, broke up with me. And what seemed like a pretty ordinary event on the outside was actually very painful for me and made me feel like I wasn't lovable. And then I spent the next 20 years, trying to prove myself in every way, shape, or form from that original, injury.
So I think it's, I'm so glad that you took time to share that with us, because as we are kind of examining our own dragons, it can be something as simple as that,
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that it's not always detectable from the outside. My poor parents were horrified when my book came out, and they were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea you were in so much pain, when you were 15 years old, because I hid it quite well. And it was just a normal thing. I was a freshman in high school and I got my heart broken, big deal, get over it. But I then started collecting evidence of like, see, I'm not good enough because something else didn't happen, or see, I'm not good enough, I didn't get into this college. And so I started to use, subsequent, slights as kind of proof that I wasn't good enough.
I think we can all relate with that. Because when we look through our lives, we can kind of build up that little negative story that comes up. And before we know it, it is a dragon.
Yeah. And I talk about in Slay Like a Mother that I'm a very sensitive human being. And I always have been. I always sensed that things, hurt me harder or cut me deeper compared to the people around me. So that's just another thing for men or women, to be aware of. If you do have a heightened sense of sensitivity, then I think you're more likely to have this dragon of self-doubt.
So, my goodness, there's so much research you've done for this book. What are some other things that you'd like to share with our listeners as far as some of the research and things that you found that may have surprised you?
One thing that I thought was really interesting is social media is very hard for, a lot of women, because you're looking at other women and they look so perfect in their families or their careers or their lives. It's definitely their highlight reel. And we did some research about, why we put perfection out there in social media. And what we found was the women that admittedly were putting all of their best photos up, taking, dozens and dozens of photos just to get a good one. They weren't doing it actually to impress other people. They were doing it to feel better about themselves, so that before they go to bed at night, they had a really bad day, they can scroll through their Facebook feed and see all of the previous moments, from that year, that they were a good mom and they were having a good moment. And it's kind of the same thing as your family photo album. You wouldn't put all the crappy photos or the mishaps or the downsides. You would put all of the upsides. And so I just thought that was kind of an interesting nuance that, maybe people are putting their best foot forward so that they can make themselves feel better, not with the intention of making other people feel bad.
That is surprising, because, you look at that and a lot of times, people do get slammed on social media going, oh, this person's just seeking attention, when maybe they're just trying to find a way to self-soothe. Exactly.
And, it's a convenient form of having all of your, great moments in one place. That's not the, photo album from the 70s.
Yeah. You talk about in your book how we're living with these superhero expectations and this, here we're in this mortal world. How does that all come together with living with a dragon?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because it's one of my favorite chapters in the book. It's all about how the difference between high expectations, which are important. We should have high expectations for ourselves and for our lives, but there's a difference between high and too high. And when we set our expectations too high, I'm going to be homeschooling my children. I'm going to make it to every single meeting. I'm going to have a healthy dinner on the table every night during these changing times. That's completely unrealistic. And when we do that, we just give ourselves the opportunity to fail and fall short. And that's when our dragon just wakes up and, eats us alive with, telling us that we're pathetic and everybody else is perfect. But yeah, if your expectations are not achievable, you're going to feel like a loser all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of a self-defeating thing. And so what are some things that, that we can do that would, I wouldn't say, we don't want to lower our standards, but we definitely want to have realistic expectations.
Yeah, I would invite anybody listening to write down the 3 things that are new to you in your life right now. It could be, obviously, changing times with, the health of the world, but it also could be, someone in your family has a breast cancer diagnosis, or you recently got remarried, or you just got a new job, or your children are in 2 new schools. But 3 things that are new to you, because these are the areas that we need to give ourselves grace. We're new to them, which means we are a rookie, and rookies don't get things right the first time. And unfortunately, especially as women and mothers, we don't take the time to remember that we're new at something, and we just want to be perfect at it right away. But reminding yourself, and put it on a Post-it note, put it somewhere, because you'll be more likely to give yourself some grace.
So we talked about how we feel about ourselves, but what other areas of a mom's life are affected by self-doubt?
So yeah, self-doubt really can infiltrate so many different areas of your life. It can be finances, your marriage, certainly your appearance, physical fitness. Those are the top areas that we see it coming out. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it really comes up in new areas of your life, things, aspects of your life that you haven't done before, you're new to, and that's when you need to give yourself a break.
Well, that's an important thing to kind of look for, because, gosh, if you're having this, self-doubt and it's affecting your marriage, you really want to take a strong look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can affect a lot of your relationships. And again, if you're operating from the point that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, you probably are going to, fuss and fight with your partner more and, be suspicious even when they compliment you. It's hard for you to even hear that. And so it does put a wedge in between, a lot of relationships in your life. And then once you heal yourself and you learn to love yourself, then relationships get a little bit easier. I mean, I even say in my life that I still have a lot of chaos in my life. I'm a normal, human being, but it's easier to deal with the chaos around you when you're not also dealing with the chaos inside of you. And that's really the difference. It just becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I love how in your book you talk about curbing the self-criticism and making room for that self-compassion that's coming your way. And how important is that? Because I think a lot of times moms and just women in general thinking that we have self-compassion coming our way, that's kind of hard to think of.
Yeah, it always seems like kind of an elusive concept, and it is for most women. But at the end of the day, it's really about like, can you see the good in what you're already doing? And can you love yourself when you're new at something? And those are really healing thoughts and, helpful thoughts, and they can really lift you up. And so we're so good at seeing the bad, like, oh, my thighs are jiggling. But every once in a while, when your arms do look great or you make a great dinner, we have to stop and recognize the good moments. Eventually we can see less of the bad, but in the beginning, just try to see more of the good.
It's really training your mind to do that because, I mean, it's not like, I decide tomorrow I'm going to run a marathon and, I've never even run a mile and I'm going to be able to do that.
Yeah, all of this takes, patience and practice. And, I always, use the analogy that if you were going to, let's say, take a yoga class for the first time or a pottery class for the first time, instead of going the beginner class, go to the intermediate class, because inherently you're going to be putting yourself in a situation where for a full 60 minutes, everyone around you is going to be better at what they're doing than you are, because you're brand new and you're kind of leveling up in a class. And so the exercise there and the practice there is, can you love yourself when you're the worst in the room at it? And for 60 minutes, can you not yell at yourself and tell yourself that you suck? And can you be happy for the people who are good, even when you're not? And so that's an example of like, it really is a training. You can get better at this practice.
Yeah, my goodness. I mean, it's easy to get into that headspace going, well, I should be better at this. I'm yoga, big deal. I've taken yoga for years. I haven't gotten back into it. I'm sure it's going to be easy. You show up and, you're not able to really do what some other people are doing.
Yeah, anytime you're in a new situation, you're kind of looking around, everybody else is better than you, or everybody else knows everybody and you don't know anybody. And that's really where your dragon can flare up and just basically, return the same rhetoric, which is, I told you you were worthless. I told you you weren't good enough. And so it's kind of the same refrain. It's just brought out by different circumstances in our life that poke us or trigger us.
Yeah, bring that in. Well, and I know in your book you talk about, signs that we're wearing a mask. And I'd love for you to share with us what a mask is and what are some of those signs we can look for.
Yeah, the mask is what we all put on when we're having a hard time and we say everything's fine, everything's perfect, our partner's super helpful, our kids are angels, and it's more than just putting your best foot forward. It's actually lying and posturing to the extent that it's a mask, no longer just makeup. And a key sign that you have a mask is if you answer questions twice, once in your mind and once out loud. So let's say you get back from a beach vacation from 2 young kids and, somebody says, how was your, beach vacation, Karen? And in your mind, you say, oh my God, it was so horrible. There's 2 young kids. There's sand everywhere. I need a vacation from the vacation. I'm so tired. but your mouth says, oh, it was beautiful. It was so great, long walks on the beach, and you lie. And just start to pay attention if that's your MO. And eventually you have to get to the point where your insides match your outsides and you're not saying something that's completely untrue.
Yeah, I think that would be a difficulty. Probably, I can see Instagram or posts going up of the kids sleeping going, hey, my little angels, while you're at the beach, they're throwing sand at each other, there are fights going on, it's just mayhem.
Yeah. It's for some reason for mothers, it's just so hard for us to admit that it's hard. Mm-hmm. And, we weren't really raised that way. I think previous generations of mothers didn't, shout it from the rooftops about how hard it is. I think younger mothers are doing a better job at that. You look at millennial moms and they're much more vocal and honest. And I think that helps because otherwise there's just this belief that vacation always has to be fun and raising young kids always has to be wonderful. And it's the more we open up and say it's hard, the more, help and support and relief we'll all feel.
Do you ever get people asking you like how much honesty they should give when people are asking them these questions? Because, maybe it was a hellacious vacation that they got back from and there was fighting the entire time. I mean, what do you say then?
Yeah, that what I always say is just make sure some of the truth comes out. It doesn't have to be all of the truth, but don't have it be, completely a facade. So let's say your marriage is in trouble and you and your husband we're fighting the whole time, then I think a more honest answer is, what, my husband and I didn't get along the whole time, but when we did, it was great, or something that at least lets some of your truth leak out, because you have to feel that it's okay. Like you have to let some of the truth leak out, and then you see that the world keeps spinning and you don't have to be perfect and people don't, hate you because of it or think less of you because of it. So just let some of it come out.
Do you ever feel that people get to a point that their dragons can be just extinguished? They're like, hey, I'm done with my dragons. Or is that kind of another sense of, not really being honest? Because I think we all have things going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from my personal experience, I do feel like I slayed my dragon in that it's not controlling my life anymore. I'm not making decisions because of it. But what I usually say is that I can hear the echo quite frequently. It's still like, old habits die hard. And so I still hear some of that negativity. But like I said earlier, I can help shut it up a whole lot faster now. But I think people have different experiences. And I've had some readers say that they feel like they have multiple dragons and they have like a dragon in their marriage and they have a dragon with their boss or their career, and they're slightly different. So I think it might be different for different people.
So can moms teach their children, how to slay their dragons too?
Moms can absolutely teach their children to slay dragons. And the final chapter in my book is called Raising Dragon Slayers. And that's what it's all about, is teaching our children to be aware of these beasts and therefore more resilient against them. And one of the exercises that I recommend in Slay Like a Mother is to, at the end of each day, discuss with your children their peak and their pit, as well as yours. So the best part and the worst part of your day. And what this will teach you and your children is that no day is perfect. Every day has a really bad part to it. And they should expect that for tomorrow too. And also that their mother is not perfect. They'll learn that you have highs and lows. And I think it's really good. I think it's really important to raise children in households where they don't feel like they have to be perfect and that they see that there are bad days, bad times, bad moments. And I think that's important.
That probably takes a lot of stress off. Really, and also probably an aha moment going, what? Mom's not perfect? What do you mean?
Yeah. And I learned a lot about myself too. I mean, it's just kind of fascinating to lay there, in a bed at night. And then I'm like, what was worst part of my day, because you can start to see themes, over time of things that bother you or annoy you or go wrong. And I love it. And the kids look forward to it, and it's neat.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I think I have time for one or two more questions here. It's so often that moms get to this point where, saying no is like a bad word. So how do they set boundaries and really establish what is, healthy for them?
I try to tell mothers all over that if you have a problem saying no, that's not actually your problem. Your problem isn't that you can't say no to other people. It's that you have a hard time saying yes to yourself. And that's really what you're doing. When you say no to the bake sale, you're saying yes to staying home and reading a magazine or getting a pedicure. You're saying yes to yourself, or you have the ability to say yes to yourself. And so what I invite women to do is put yourself on your calendar in reoccurring meetings for the things that really replenish your tank. So it could be a yoga class every Wednesday or once a month wine with your girlfriends, but put it on there in reoccurring meetings so that you're committing to doing it ongoing, and do it out in the future. So let's say 6 weeks from now, when that time approaches, you're already there and built in on your calendar, and you can fit all the other stuff in, but you're choosing to make sure that you say yes to yourself.
That's such important advice, because how often do moms, they're like at the bottom of the list if they even make the list, so being able to have that time for yourself seems like it could be such a rare thing.
Yeah, and our lives revolve around our calendar. So if you go to your calendar, next week, it's really hard just to find time to go to the gym or go somewhere or work out or whatever it is, take a bath. But if you have that pre-planning, and then somebody comes to you and says, hey, can we talk at 2:00 on Tuesday about X, Y, Z, and you're already marked off on your calendar, then you say, no, I can't do it at 2, but how about at 4? And 9 times out of 10, the other person just goes, okay. I can make that work.
Well, I love that. I love your book. Katherine, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Yeah, I would love for anybody to follow along on Instagram or Facebook. It's at Slay Like a Mother, and we regularly share tips and tricks from other women or other mothers, and so we can all learn to slay together.
I love that. Well, Katherine, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Well, Katherine, it has been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your new book, Slay Like a Mother. Slay Like a Mother is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, you can ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. And again, if you'd like to connect with Katherine, you can at her website, which is Katherine with a K, WINTSCH.com for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.